All right, so we'll have our call to order and disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Are there any?
No.
Perfect. All right, so we'll move ahead to the adoption of the minutes. Did everybody receive them and get a chance to read them?
Yes.
All right. Can I have a motion for adoption?
Sure.
Howard? And a seconder? Jacob. All right. Do we need an all in favor, Casey? I always forget. All in favor? Perfect. Thank you. All right. Moving on to the previous minutes. We are deferring our heritage alteration permit application and review and date of the sign bylaw review until further notice. So we're moving to 4.c and an update on the Heritage Conservation District standards.
Yes. Well, thanks to Pat, who sent me some very good notes. I'm going to, sorry, I have them on my computer somewhere. So I drafted, or I recast some notes that that Pat sent to me, and I'm not sure whether I should just read those out into the minutes or whether I should circulate them to everybody. What do you think?
How long are they? Should we?
Oh, it's just like 2 paragraphs.
Okay, let's read them into the minutes. If that's okay with Casey. And also if you could send her a copy so that
Yes.
they into the minutes and she can verify.
Right. So, well, actually, maybe there should be some discussion, because one of the questions that was left open was how big of a grant we should actually be asking for. So I'm not sure how much we need, and I'm not sure what consultants are paid these days. But why don't I read out what I have, and then maybe people will have some thoughts then. So the title would be Heritage Stratford Grant Request, and then / update Heritage Conservation District Standards. And what we came up with now this was as guidance for City Council in going after grant money. Heritage Stratford wishes to update its Heritage Conservation District standards. Our existing standards were adopted under the then current Ontario Heritage Act and are now 25 years old. The Act was amended around 2005 and now requires that municipalities adopt an HCD plan that includes alteration standards at time of designation. Adopting a new plan consistent with the Act would require a public meeting, a process that could cost $50,000 to $100,000, according to Jeff Lunison. Heritage Stratford proposes a more modest approach, a grant of, and I put $10,000, but it should be whatever we think is appropriate to get the job done, would allow us to hire a consultant who would accomplish the following 3 tasks. Identify comparably sized municipalities in Ontario, especially southwestern Ontario, with downtown heritage conservation districts. Review the standards or guidelines for alterations in the targeted HCDs and compare these with Stratford's standards, existing standards, and then identify revisions that would bring Stratford's Heritage Conservation District standards into compliance with provincial standards.
Okay.
So this is really thanks to Pat. I've just kind of neatened the edges.
So do we have any idea comparatively what grant amounts might be available. I don't know if Alyssa, you would know.
I don't know offhand, Cambria, but certainly this is something that staff can look into a little bit further on this. But I don't have any information I can share on that offhand.
Okay. Because it's hard without some context to know what a reasonable amount would be. We do know, as you said, Howard, that initially for a larger scale project with a consultant, we were looking at a budget minimum we thought was about $50,000, which we do not have. So something of a smaller scale seems reasonable at 10, but I don't know. Danielle, have you any kind of optics on what might be possible?
In terms of a grant, no. In terms of what this study is going to cost, we have a ballpark figure, but in terms of a grant, no.
Okay. Patrick, any sort of further thoughts from you? What Howard has shared?
I mean, I agree that it's kind of not a black box, but it's kind of an unknown as to what something like that would cost without talking to somebody. But it also seems to me what it becomes kind of a chicken and the egg, talking to people about doing it and without giving them some idea of the budget. It doesn't necessarily help. It's the way it was described. It is a series of steps. You do A, then B, then C. So I suppose one way to look at it is you've got kind of a reasonable, hopefully reasonable sum, and at least make progress through some of that this year and perhaps finish the job next year if the money doesn't go as far as you'd like it to.
Well, I mean, I think personally, as sort of the next step, I think the amount of money to be requested seems reasonable. For the whole project, we may want to break it out, as you say, perhaps to, to step it, if you like, if the full amount is either not going to cover it, the 10 grand, or we want to apply for a lesser amount. But I'm willing to go forward with that. I think the description is clear. And I think asking for that amount makes sense, even though it's kind of spitballing. Is there a next step you both want to take to do more research, or just simply go forward?
Can't speak for Howard, but I'm not sure how much more we can do at this point.
Okay.
Without trying to engage someone. I'm trying to, I don't recall the rules for the city in issuing contracts or this, but it seems to be the first question is to get the money, since we don't have the money. If we get the grant, then we can find out how to spend it.
Yeah, sure enough. All right. So I think my suggestion would be to go forward to request what you have put forward. I'm just trying to look at, just looking up our notes. Okay. All right. I would be in favor of simply going forward. I don't know if we need a motion, Casey, to go forward with making a grant request for this.
We would. I would have to check perhaps with the clerk, unless Danielle or Alyssa can answer the question. I'm not sure that an advisory committee can apply for a grant.
Hmm.
I don't have any other committees that have applied for a grant. I'm not sure how that works.
Right.
Alyssa, would you know?
I agree with Casey. It's probably a good question for the city clerk, just to clarify what the process is and who the appropriate party would be to apply for a grant if a grant was available.
Okay. So let's take that as an action item if we can, to reach
Yep.
out to the city clerk to clarify those questions.
Yep, I can do that.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Howard and Patrick. All right. Oh. Are there any other questions on that? Perfect. Okay. The next business arising is the blue plaque update. So we did have a meeting last week of our awards committee, which is our combined committee for both James Anderson and the blue plaque program. And we talked about sort of next steps with the blue plaque program, and have decided on a promotion that we'd like to run that's sort of called Tell Us Your Story. What we're looking to do is engage the Stratford community in the blue plaque nominations. Previously, Heritage Stratford has come up with ideas, researched them, decided on a go forward, and we've simply done it. So we want to engage the Stratford community to suggest stories that match a important person lived in Stratford, is from Stratford, and a building that they were in or they were associated with that has a story. And so, as I've said, our two blue plaques, one of them is for Thomas Edison at Edison's. He lived there when he lived in Stratford. Another one is for a rather famous doctor who grew up here. And so our committee would like to launch a public nomination process, and starting immediately and running till the second week of June. We decided on this time frame because we need to take any nominations and essentially vet them, make sure that they are true and accurate, and that they comply with our program outlines, and then come back to this committee in our September meeting with our recommendations for what our blue plaque awardees will be. And we can do one or two if we want. So within our committee, we decided that we would reach out for a press release, working with Mike from the city, who can also then put it on the city websites, and he tends to post also on Facebook as well. I did a draft of our program outline and our nomination form. Thank you, Barb, for your suggestion. That was very good. And we will also post those on our site and the city site so people can send them in. We can work with the Beacon and radio and, you know, do the usual basically to get this program out there and give people an opportunity to tell the story. Interestingly enough, I actually got a nomination sent to me today. So award committee members, look in your email. I passed it on to you. So we already have one. So that's the plan for our blue plaque program. It's basically just making it a little wider, getting more information in, and also starting to build up a database of interesting facts, people, places, so that we have these for future blue plaque years. This is supposed to be every 2 years running this program. So it would be very helpful if we had a database that we could work from. Any questions or any comments from the award committee? Have I missed anything? All right, thank you. And the next award is the James Anderson Award. And the nominees that I presented last meeting were all sent to you. And I hope everybody had a chance to look at them. And we need to have a vote on those. And I'm just going to reiterate what they were. We have 2 nominees for this award this year. The first one is for Gerard Brender of Brandis, who is at 77 Brunswick. And we are awarding him within the cultural James Anderson award category for his preservation efforts for 77 Brunswick. It's a 1860s residence. It is a designated building, and it was once lived in by James Anderson. So Gerard basically took James Anderson's work and has extended it over the decades he has lived in this house. And then the second award is for the Anderson family, who live at 62 Cambria, and they are being awarded for the built environment category for the restoration of what was perhaps a typical Stratford house of the era that was lived in by a railway employee who worked for the railway for, I think, well over 50 years. And they took it from being a rather unattractive semi-derelict building and have restored it completely in a simple manner, and also increased the curb appeal of the house. So those are the 2 awards. I'd like to do a motion or have a motion that this committee approves of these 2 James Anderson Awards for 2020. Pat?
Yeah.
And seconded. Roger?
Sure.
And all in favor? Perfect. Thank you. The next step will be for the awards committee to book a time and a location for the award ceremony. I'll work with Casey to reach out to the successful nominees and inform them that they're winners, and we will coordinate the ceremony with them. We're looking at either the patio, perhaps at Revival, being able to do some kind of distanced ceremony. It's right across the street from 77 Brunswick. And if that doesn't work, we could go to Jump Brewery because it's across the street from Cambria. So, but anyway, I think, we're going to have to keep in mind the continuing restrictions for gatherings, but we would like to definitely have something. And looking at the end of May, first week of June to do that as it warms up. All right. Are there any further questions?
And just a comment that in the last few years, we had the awards, well, a couple of years, we had it in the second Tuesday of June. So when a regularly scheduled meeting night. And
Sure
that just makes it easy for people's schedules, I guess.
Sure enough.
The one we did outdoors with the butterfly garden was in July, but that was in part because of the weather.
Yeah. That's a really good point, Pat. I'd forgotten that. So maybe we'll aim for our June meeting to be the presentation. If there is for some, like I said, we're going to have to work around what the rules are going to be like in terms of the number of people who can gather and, where we can gather and stuff. So we'll have to keep a little bit of an eyeball on what's going on. Hopefully by June, we're not in the same lockdown we are now. But thanks, yes. Okay. The next business arising is our special project. So I'm going to pass it over to that subcommittee. I've got, Robin's not here, but I've got Roger, Pat, and Jack for an update.
Any, I'll give some. We had a Zoom meeting in part to talk about the option that the Beacon Herald and the Marketplace periodically do special sections, and we talked about, was there a way we could get something into that? The timing was just too short. They would have required us to provide material as of end of the day today. No, sorry, yesterday, and we certainly weren't going to make that. And then subsequently, or during the course of the meeting, I think Jack mentioned that he understood that Sam was going to be in touch with you, Cambria, to talk about doing something that was online as opposed to in print. And I think we all kind of thought that that might be a better first step or a way to start. And then subsequently, Roger sent out what I think is a good model, for lack of a better way to put it, looking at some recent construction and giving a bit of a description of it and history from an architectural perspective, and citing that as an example of good work in the city as opposed to tearing things down or building square boxes.
Yeah.
But in a way, that's also the kind of thing that would work fairly easily, I think, online or through social media, because it's a visual activity, and at least in practice, we could probably produce those relatively easily. Some of the information we have and the architectural aspects of it, I think, can probably get comments on that. We do have an architectural historian on the committee who might give us some help.
Perfect.
So I guess that's one question. Can you have been in touch with you?
So I did talk to Melissa Schenk for Saba, and she also has a media company. That's what she does. So she and I talked about some of the things that I thought were a good outline. She is definitely someone who can produce video. She does a lot of social media, and she can also do PDF guidelines for builders and clients. So she has lots of great ideas and very enthusiastic. We simply left it at the fact that we're going to have this meeting and get some feedback from you folks, and then have a look at what kind of budget we might need or how we might organize that. So I don't know, Roger, if you have any more that you want to add.
Not necessarily. We kind of talked about it in the email thread a bit. It's just putting ideas out there and then received a bit of feedback, but obviously the more feedback, then the more it'll come into focus of what we're actually gonna plan to do.
Thank you. Jack?
Well, I think you're right about Melissa, whether how you do it through her company or a joint project with Sabbaths, it's up to the committee. But certainly for video and social media, you're absolutely right. She is an expert on it. I guess the other thing is, if money was tight, I do enjoy, there's a few Facebook pages. The one, if you grew up in Stratford, there's some wonderful information that comes up there with old photographs and stuff like that. And Mike Beats, he's a Stratford media guy too, and then a former newspaper writer. So, if you're into photography versus video, you could probably start a campaign. The city of Stratford has a Facebook page, I believe, too.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think as a committee, and the city of Stratford, you could probably put a imagery and text together. But if you wanted to go video, then you would need somebody like Melissa to
Yeah.
get involved with that.
So what was your thoughts for your next steps as a committee? Is it getting content? Is it starting to, Melissa, I think, could pick up the ball on getting content together, but again, I'm not sure what budget we might want to discuss, how we might want to share this with Saba, or what this committee is wanting to do.
Well, I would think just listening to Patrick, he's visited some of these sites and he seems to know his architecture pretty good. He could probably prepare some texts and stuff. He knows he's being very modest, I can tell, but it seems like he knows his Victorian houses and whatnot. And perhaps Howard does too. I'm not sure, but
Oh,
I could even proofread it for you. Look, grammar or something.
Henry, I wonder if it would be helpful or useful to have a Zoom meeting with Melissa and see what she's thinking and what kind of money might be involved.
Yep.
And Jack, I'm probably not the architectural expert that you think I am, but Roger sent out, can't remember, 2 or 3 examples now that he had found.
Yeah.
And I can certainly work on expanding those to some extent. And then probably need to call on Howard for a little bit of assistance on the architectural aspects.
okay. All right.
Everything I know about it, I learned from Howard.
Well, absolutely. We do a next step with Melissa then and start gathering content, I think, to and to flesh out what needs to be done. And she does have quite good ideas on the whole thing. So, all right. Casey, did you want to do that? Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, I think probably you as the chair should reach out to her.
Okay, I will do that. Okay. Does anybody else have any thoughts on this, input, questions? All righty. Okay. So the next piece of action is actually, it's regarding our discussion from last month on adding an ACO representative to Heritage Stratford. And I reached out to the ACO, and in fact, their response was this, and I'll read it. At the ACO executive meeting on March 6th, a motion was passed to request that Heritage Stratford consider having one of our executive members as an ex officio member. And ex officio, I think, is a reasonably good compromise in a way for both organizations. We had expressed interest that the 2 organizations work more together. However, Architectural Conservancy, while they are also an advocacy group for heritage, don't necessarily want to be official or bound by certain official rules or regulations, such as this committee, as we are part of the city. And so I think ex officio solves that issue for ACO. For us, ex officio would be a non-voting membership, so it would not change our terms and conditions in terms of having quorum. We would still have the same number of voting members, but they would attend, sort of like Jack is attending and Jake are attending as part of SABA. They would be ex officio ACO membership, so they could be aware of what we do and share information, but they wouldn't vote. So they are interested in doing this. It is up to Heritage Stratford to agree to it. So I'm looking for input, issues that you might have with this, how it might impact this committee. Thoughts? Don't be shy. Apparently you are
is the
shy.
nearest, who is the nearest ACO rep who would want to join?
So you mean who they're putting forward as their ex officio, or?
Are like, for instance, is there members of the ACO in Stratford now that
Yes,
live here?
yes. So ACO has a Stratford group. They're actually quite active. Those beige signs that you see around town that are up on houses that say things like, you know, William Smith Butcher lived here in, 1851, that kind of thing. Those are ACO plaques. And so what the ACO will do is there's a certain cost for those plaques. I think it's basically just getting the plaque done, and they have members who research a house, and usually out at the archives. I don't know what they're doing right now, but they have a fairly active research group that research the house, and then we'll get a plaque printed up, a story printed up, and give it to the owners of the house. So that's the most visible behavior of the ACO that we see around town, is that plaque program. And they're quite busy with it. So they have suggested one of their members as a representative with an alternative. There's nothing stopping ACO members from sitting on this committee and applying to sit here on Heritage Stratford. It's just that we don't have anybody who is part of both organizations currently. Right. Oh, I was going to say, Roger?
Yeah.
You're on mute.
Here we go. It seems like a good place to start and fairly non-intrusive that could help build a relationship that we sort of already have identified.
Yeah, I think so. Sorry. Thanks. Pat?
Roger just said what I was thinking. It seems like a good start, and it doesn't cause us any numbers issues or have to sort that out.
Yeah. I think that was one of our bigger concerns. Casey?
I think that it's still something that will have to be passed through council,
Okay.
because even though they're a non-voting member, you're requesting that it's an official position on Heritage Stratford. And we can't decide that, only council can decide that. So we could pass a motion tonight for the request to add that position to Heritage Stratford, even though it's a non-voting one. You still want to make it a position. And then they'd come back and say yes or no, you can do that. And then the people who are interested would apply that, and council will appoint them.
Okay. The other alternative to that is to simply have them as visitors. Anybody can visit our meetings.
Yeah, so like, right, like,
Can visit our meetings.
yeah, our
Yes.
link goes out and anyone can watch.
Yes.
But we can't hear them. They don't participate. We only have at this time, because we're doing Zoom ones, just a delegate that's speaking. Members of the public can view, they're not participating.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So thoughts on that? Yes, Matt?
I was just going to say, I'll make a motion that we request council to amend the law to allow for an ex officio representative from, what's it called? The
Architectural Conservancy of
Stratford.
Ontario, Stratford Division.
Yeah. Whatever their official name is.
Do we have a seconder? Barb? All in favor? Any dissenting? No. Thank you. All right. Okay, so the next item is the digital doors open update. And Danielle, I had that item for you.
Think there was any action item for me to follow up on. We had talked about it, but I don't know that we had ever decided that we were going to carry forward with it.
Yeah, I think you were going to reach out to the festival to see if they were going to be involved with Tom Patterson, perhaps.
That was Robin. Robin had a contact for,
Oh, okay.
yeah, he had a contact for doing drone work and
Yeah.
a contact at the theater. So Robin was going to reach out, but I think that was it.
Yeah, he did put me in touch with his drone individual, and I said we really didn't have anything to share right at this moment. I reached out to them and got crickets back, but I did check their site, and it looks like all that they're doing is they're putting up sites. So, Tom Patterson or the Festival Theater could be its own site. City Hall, Stratford could be its own site. Or the city of Stratford could have its own site. I did check out a few of them that are on the doors open. What's it called? I actually have it up. I did have it up. It was called the Doors Open Virtual, I think. But what I found interesting, I did find just by scooting around that, for instance, downtown Lindsay has a virtual tour, and they are highlighting their Heritage Conservation District and have a thing called a story map, where you can go and look at a map, look at some heritage maps and pictures, and you can click on a little icon and it'll pull up some information about that building. And so I don't think we're quite there yet, certainly to provide that kind of content, but it might be worth suggesting to this committee to go to the Doors Open site and have a look at what's up there. There's museums, there's all kinds of different things. It's a mismatch of specific buildings or institutions, but I think it's a good way to get some ideas of what we might want to do. There obviously, everything is virtual. There are no physical doors open planned for 2021. They have not updated their information on their site to do that. But there might be some pretty good ideas there if you have time to cruise through the site and look at it. I kind of liked what Lindsay was doing, and I thought it was something we might want to look at. What they're doing, though, is a little bit of a bigger project. But at this point, I think it's still up in the air, and we can get an update maybe from Robin. If he said he might show up tonight, but maybe we'll table that till next meeting. All right, and so that brings us to the last item on our business arising, which was the Destination Stratford audio tours update. Patrick.
I don't have a lot to say. Zach Gribble and I have exchanged a couple voicemails, and on the last one, I gave him a fairly lengthy, I guess, description of what we thought we might be able to do, and I haven't heard back from him. So I don't know whether other activities have taken up his time. And I don't know him personally, and he doesn't know me either, but I will make another effort to contact him next week.
Okay. Yeah,
just to say that in a way, the walking tour and the open house, it was just open house kind of tour, they don't collapse on each other, but they're kind of two means to the same end. So should be, I guess, thinking about that when we're looking at the doors open.
Yep. You're right. They do dovetail really nicely together. So let's see what they say. Okay. So moving on, we have the designation subcommittee update and the non-designated properties registrar. I don't personally have a lot to update on that. Alyssa, I don't know if you were in contact with them.
Sure, so I can provide a bit of an update, Cambria. So since the last Heritage Stratford meeting, I've had both Cambria and Pat take a look at the scope of work and provide some input into that. So thank you very much to both of you for the feedback on that. And then what we have also done is the consolidated inventory list that was prepared in 2016 or 2017. I've had one of the planning staff members update that list to identify the properties that were looked at by the Heritage Resource Center previously, and then also to identify any properties that have been designated since that work was undertaken. And what I need to do now is package it all up and send it off to the Heritage Resource Center. So I hope to do that in the next week or two, and then I can certainly provide an update at the next committee meeting should I hear back from the Resource Center by that time.
Perfect. That's terrific. Thank you. All right. Any questions on that, Patrick?
Well, no, it's not on that, but only because we're on the designation subcommittee. It's a question for Casey, now that I have her. Is the clerk's office open now?
It is
I'm
still
asking-
open, yes.
Okay, because I have the bronze plaque for 265 St. David sitting on a chair that's going to go to the auction next week, I think. So I have to get it somewhere else.
Yes, there's
So
a
I'll try and
skeleton,
I'll
there's
drop
a
it.
skeleton staff there, so you can drop it off. I'm not working out of the office right now, but there is staff there.
Okay, as long as I put your name on it, it'll get
Yeah.
to you eventually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. And the next item is the Evancrest property. Howard? You're on mute.
So I think everybody received the message that Brian sent out from his conversation. I gather, Brian, you were in touch with what is his name? Francisco.
Francisco, yeah, I've known him for years.
So what we know now is that they've put the project on hold. And I was interested to see that they talked about an LTC, which I gather is long-term care, which wasn't something that seemed to be in the original proposal for the request for solutions. To me, that feels positive, possibly, because that would be, if that was the function they were thinking of for the building, that could mean that it would be preserved in some form. But I still feel like we should be moving ahead with our attempts to get the building designated, and maybe this is a right moment to have the hospital reconsider their plans or reconsider how they could forward their plans while still maintaining the building.
I have a little more update. I had talked to Paul Veltman, who's a developer we know. He got the James Anderson Award for the Bradshaw Lofts last year. And he looked at the property and was interested. And I put him in touch with Francisco, and Francisco immediately shut him down. And I thought that they might be able to, start some initial stuff to actually get it developed or saved or anything. But Francisco was very much hands off. When we're ready to look at it again, we'll send out a new package that people can provide proposals on. So they're just not prepared to do anything at this time, apparently.
Okay.
Okay. Well,
So the timing might be suitable for us to proceed then. Is really,
Yeah.
I guess, my point.
Well, I certainly agree. My question to Howard then is there any, are there a couple of things that you need to add to what you've done at this point? It looked like there was just a couple of things I think needed just detail, like.
Yeah, and well, and there are things that are sort of outside of my expertise, and I think they're the kinds of things that normally, when a consultant would have been hired to do that entire project, they would have had that kind of background.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether if anybody else has that, or I don't see that we want to hire a consultant just to sort of do that little bit. I don't know, Casey, is there anybody in the city that can advise on I mean, because some of the I can't remember now what the blanks were, but it seemed to me that they were kind of technical details.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful? I know, like, it's been a long time since we've done a designation, and I know Rachel looked after quite a bit of it, but there are certain requirements that council needs about the property. Would it be helpful if I had the list of all the requirements, if I got that? And maybe Alyssa, you know what, she could answer that. Certain aspects of the building and different things that they would need.
Sure, Casey, maybe what I can offer to do is pull the staff report from the last time a property was designated, because it would outline a lot of those requirements. And then we can also pull the requirements from the Heritage Act and send those through as well to the committee for them to consider.
That would be great. Thank you. I think you had a lot of that ticked off, Howard. I was wondering if you needed access to the archives, or we needed access to the archives for a couple of things. I think that one of the things I remember was just sort of like the lot information, that kind of thing, sort of just technical information that you're just not going to find through searching. And that might be available. Yes, Pat.
Having written the request for the old fairgrounds, or at least the R draft, I'm a bit familiar with the form we used then, and I think, though I'm not familiar with what was done at 265 St. David, I assume it was the same basic format of the report to council. And my sense is that you have captured most, not all, of what's required. I mean, I think there's some things that somebody would say, maybe there should be a bit more on this, maybe, you know, technical stuff like the legal description of the property. That is something I'm sure the planning department or building department can provide. It's just the legal description.
Right.
What I suggest is, Howard, you're more familiar with it. Can you maybe highlight or summarize the things the work you've done to date that you think are not sufficient, and maybe we can have a discussion about those and see where we might get the expertise, and if it's things that the city can probably provide for us, then I think that's we can ask that of Alyssa by email or something like that. I don't think it needs to be formal. And the other thing to remember in all of this, the Ontario regulation something or other 90, I think, lists, I guess in total 9 criteria, and it makes it clear that a property is only required to meet those criteria to qualify for designation. So the issue is not so much does it meet the technical legal threshold, is does it, I guess, relative to the community and its neighborhood and the city orientation, and that's somewhat technical, but it's also, I think, as much, if not more, a value judgment than anything else. If you literally applied the heritage or the regulation criteria in a town like Stratford and said, if you meet one of these, you would designate it, there would be several hundred, if not more, in Medford. So that's my suggestion, and then take a look as to what, if anything, we might need to fill in outside of the technical stuff that the city be able to provide. And if we need to get some external advice, we might be able to focus it down enough that we could do that without having to spend a deal of money for it. And I still think my view on this is, well, it's highly unlikely that city council would agree to designate the property absent the owner's consent, whoever the legal owner may be. I still think it is of value, and it's correct for the committee to, in some form, this is a property that meets the criteria for nation and is at in some risk because of development.
I agree. I actually saw some Facebook posts. I can't remember which one. It was.
Just for their information.
Yeah, sorry, Pat. So I did see some Facebook posts that people were speculating what was going to be happening to that building. And saying things like, it'll probably be torn down. So I think it behooves us to take a little bit of a stand. And I wanted to thank you, Howard, for all of the work you put into that document. It was incredibly detailed and very, very good. So thank you very much. Hopefully everybody got a chance. I think, did you circulated it to the whole committee, correct?
I think Casey did, yeah.
Yeah, I hope everybody had a chance to read through it and have a look at the document. It's excellent. So, so yeah, let's have a discussion. I've got a couple of notes here. Casey will, you'll reach out and get the requirements, and Alyssa, you're going to look at some of the staff reporting from the last one. And then we'll just look at what those bits are that needed to be added. There's not much. I think it's just a couple of details legally and some formatting. And I think that's it. Brian, did you have something you wanted to raise as well? I think I saw your hand.
No, sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Right.
bouncing in and out of video. My boys both have junior achievement Zoom meetings on Tuesday night, so we're fighting for internet connection.
Oh, yes, yes, the unending fight for internet connections.
Yeah.
With everybody who has kids and everybody who's basically homeschooling from now on. So
Yeah.
anyway, yes, I feel for all of you. All right, are there any more questions or input regarding the Evancrest designation and next steps? Jack?
Just a couple of observations, and I don't mean to rain on anybody's parade, but when council gets a hold of this, if we proceed, that's going to be quite a hot potato for them, I would think, to deal with. It'll be very entertaining to watch Danielle with that one.
Or 10. We do understand. Oh, go ahead, Danielle.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I completely understand where you guys are coming from with this one, but I suspect it is not gonna get a lot of traction at council.
Mhm.
I mean, it's good for you to do it and put it on record and, bring it forward and show that you're really interested in it. I want to maintain a certain level of expectation.
Mm.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think we understand that.
Yeah, my
You're
feeling
just-
from the outset was just that this is something that we should be doing, not necessarily with the expectation that it was going to succeed, but that we should go on record. And, you know, if the worst happens, then the blame can fall somewhere else, but it can't be because we were just looking the other way, which seemed to be dereliction of our duty as a committee.
Very well said. Yeah. Yes, so we're very pragmatic, Jack. We know what our expectations are, but I think Howard did a wonderful job of just summarizing what our duty is. So again, thank you. I'm going to move on to the development services report that was sent out a little earlier today. It's not very long, but Alyssa?
Sure. So thanks, Cambria. As you mentioned, it's a fairly short development services report this month. On it is a heritage alteration permit application for 41 Marketplace. You can take a look at the description there, and I understand that that's with the permit review committee for review right now as well.
Yeah. Yes, and I think we've heard from most on the review. Roger?
I just have a question about how that works. So you have these nice buildings that are heritage, and then if someone wants to put siding on to cover up the brick that's decaying, and then we approve it, of course, because it'll clean up the look, but then like the long-term solution would be to fix the brick, wouldn't it be? If it's a heritage building?
Yes, Jacob certainly had input today on that very issue. And I think that, yes, if we were to look at best practices, probably Jake's suggestion is the best. What it comes down to is two things that were pointed out were that the cost involved of doing that without benefit of being able to get any monies to support it or grant monies, and that there is precedent already with 2 other buildings that have done the same thing. I don't know, Jake, if you want to talk to what you suggested for the current permit that's in front of us and the brickwork.
I could say a couple things if Jake's not available.
Okay.
One thing for everyone to note is that it's at the rear of the building, which is essentially an alley.
I'm kind of cutting out, but go ahead.
Sorry, I'm fighting with kids for internet connection. It's the rear of the building, which is essentially an alleyway. Although you can see it from George Street from the police station, it's essentially the back of the building. And applying a hardy board type siding, which I think is the siding that you're talking about using, really wouldn't consider destructive of the brick. So it essentially is helping to preserve it underneath it. So if some future owner wants to restore the brick, that's still a possibility.
Yeah. The brick itself is covered up and fairly degraded already. It probably would take some substantial work. The fact that it's behind the building on an alley also influences the choice, Roger, you know.
Yeah.
Frankly, yes.
Sure. And I'm just kind of wondering in terms of what has been done in the previous and like what the role of a committee is to preserve if we're allowing siding to go up. I don't want to be a hater and like stop owners from fixing up their places. But if we allow siding or basically band-aids to go over something, that just allows the heritage underneath to potentially lose its value.
Yeah. No, I think.
Can I speak to that for a second?
Mhm.
Okay. Didn't really specify what kind of siding they were talking about. There's several different types of siding, but they made reference to the hub in one of the other buildings. And I think what they're referring to is the hardy board cement siding, which is a cement-based board essentially that gets applied to the building face and essentially is a protection to the existing brick, so that if it doesn't degrade any further necessarily, and if some future owner wants to take it off, it's a matter of removing some screws, and then they can still repair the existing brick that's still there. So it's covering it up, yes, but it's not the same as losing it per se.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And it's not, if it's the hardy board siding, which I think is what they're referring to, it's not quite the same, let's say, ugliness as vinyl siding or aluminum siding.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Just wanted a little more information on the process, I guess.
All right, thank you. And so we've come to new business. Is there any new business that we need to address? All right. So we are looking then at our next meeting is May 11th. And it will also be electronic. And then the one afterwards, I guess, in June would be our James Anderson Award if we are going to go with precedent beforehand. So that's happened beforehand. So, all right, I'm going to call for a motion of adjournment. All right, Brian, and a second. See Danielle. All right. Okay. Well, thanks all of you. That was great. We did all of that in 1 hour, which was the goal. So thanks.